Video game bosses can be big or small and be difficult one way or the other, but a truly impressive boss is huge. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 of the biggest video game bosses. Starting off at number 10, the 16th Colossus from Shadow of the Colossus. This is a game that is literally entirely about big bosses. The goal of the game is specifically to hunt down and defeat 16 gigantic enemies spread across this desolate place called the Forbidden Lands. These battles basically play out like traversal puzzles where you have to figure out how your guy is supposed to get up onto the top, reach their weak point, and attack it. Weak points usually situated around the head or shoulders, so you're climbing them. Out of all the colossi in the game, the biggest, at least in terms of size and stature, is, well, not surprisingly, the final one, the 16th Colossus. What makes him stand out compared to all the others is how human it looks. It stands straight up, it's designed like it's wearing clothes, and it's the one Colossus that really feels like a weapon of war. The only way to climb it is to first cross the no man's land in front of it, as it fires deadly electric bolts at you, and you have to hide behind like any available cover to survive. Climbing it, however, is an ordeal on its own. Its unique design doesn't have nearly as many handholds as a lot of the other Colossi do, so you're stuck doing a lot of old-fashioned platforming to get to the top. And he's as big as a building, to be clear, so you're gonna have to climb a long way to get to his head and attack the weak spot. For most bosses in this game, you almost feel sorry for killing them. Most of them are just minding their own business, and when you attack them, they're kind of just forced to defend themselves. But this guy, not so much. He starts attacking the second you see him. Now, Shadow of the Colossus is, for the most part, a pretty solemn, melancholy game, but beating this guy, pretty satisfying. At number 9 is Kratos from God of War 3. The third game in the God of War series is pretty much all about spectacle. In it, Kratos, the perpetually angry Spartan warrior, invades Mount Olympus, killing every god and hero he can get his hands on, usually in some shockingly brutal way. Nearly every boss battle in the game is totally nuts, but one of the craziest is probably Kratos. I mean, he's a titan, and look at him. Kratos is like a flea in comparison. It's not exactly a full boss fight, because I don't know how you would even show that, but Kratos does get a chance to wail on this dude's fingernails to a suitably gross effect that we will not be showing. Not unrelated, do you remember that toenail medicine commercial with the fungi thing? Yeah. The whole encounter is the definition of epic, and it's hard to imagine the series ever topping just how over-the-top wild the whole sequence is. The new Norse games seem much more restrained in comparison to this one, and I think there's a good reason for that. In order to do the unexpected, you can't just keep repeating and repeating, and to just try to go more over the top than perhaps the most over-the-top thing that's possible. You can't. But remember that giant corpse you find late in the new God of War? It's possible something as crazy as the whole Kratos battle will happen. Maybe. At number 8 is Zora Magdaros from Monster Hunter World. Another series all about fighting giant monsters, and in terms of size, they're not usually Godzilla size, but they're big. Except for this big boy from Monster Hunter World, Zora Magdaros, a monster crossed with a volcano. The first time you encounter it, there's basically nothing you can do to it. It sinks your ship like it's nothing and then moves on. The entire first half of the game is about building up for your rematch with this guy, and when it finally comes to actually taking him on, the only way to really beat it is with this entire system of cannons, harpoons, and heavy weapons. You really can't beat it normally. Instead, you have to take the damn thing down in siege encounters where your main goal is to simply repel it rather than kill it. They're actually not Monster Hunter's best battles because they kind of get repetitive quickly compared to how fun a lot of other Monster Hunts can be, but it also is an interesting change up from what you're normally doing in the game. And like, look at it. It is intimidating, if nothing else. It's fighting a literal volcano. And number 7 is Adamantis from Final Fantasy 15. If you thought the previous entry was big, get a load of this. Adamantis is a staple enemy from the series, and while it's generally pretty large, it didn't get absolutely enormous in this manner until Final Fantasy 13, but it seems clear that they really wanted to top themselves this time around. They went totally crazy here. Look at this. You can only encounter this guy at the end game after going back to the main area of the game. If you go back to Hammerhead and take on a hunt called Let Sleeping Mountains Lie, it reveals that this mountain you pass by multiple multiple times on your journey is actually a huge sleeping turtle, and they don't prepare you for how big this actually is. Literally everything and everyone tells you it's a mountain, but it's hard to imagine how big it actually is, and it is a mountain. From a half-mile away on the game map, this thing takes up most of the horizon, so what makes this creature stand out compared to most other things on this list is that it's not really a cinematic battle. You're fighting the monster from ground level, so you just feel how enormous it actually is. Trying to attack it with weapons feels like trying to attack an Abrams tank with a sewing needle, but at least your teleport abilities make it a little easier to get up and do some damage. Craziest thing is they put just a ton of work into making him so big and impressive, and it's just this optional fight you can miss out on. You can not even know that it is a boss. You can think that it's a mountain forever. And that's not uncommon for Final Fantasy 15. Some of the best parts of the game are totally missable. And number 6 is the Matrix Path of Neo Megasmith. In comparison to some of the other examples on this list, this boss isn't quite as huge, but when it lacks in pure size, it easily makes up for in what? Like WTF factor? Like just, I guess, total confusion. We're talking about the surprise final battle in the Matrix Path of Neo. After the mess that was Enter the Matrix, Shiny decided to give the license another shot with a much more traditional retelling of the original 3 Matrix movies, but with a little twist at the end. Instead of the more traditional like superhero brawl between Agent Smith and Neo that capped off Revolutions, the game decides to give the players something way more interesting. So for one thing, before the fight actually starts, the Wachowskis appear and basically say that the ending of the Matrix 3 was kind of boring in terms of how a video game would play out. So here is something better. And that's when the cutscene starts of all the little Smiths combining to form a gigantic Mega Smith. Honestly, that's probably the best part about the battle, the cutscene leading up to it. It's cheesy and it's utterly ridiculous, but it's so great because the actual fight's a little lackluster in terms of mechanics, but the spectacle is definitely there. It's so goofy, it's impossible not to show some appreciation for it. The Matrix Path of Neo was a huge improvement over what they were trying to do with Enter the Matrix, although I don't want to just take a huge dump on Enter the Matrix. It was flawed, but there's a lot of interesting stuff in it. Anyway, the insane final battle is a big reason why this is an improvement. And number 5 is Jubileus from Bayonetta. When we start entering God territory, that's when the bosses are getting pretty big. Pretty much every boss in Bayonetta is oversized, but nothing's quite the size of the final boss, Jubileus the creator. Some kind of Judeo-Christian avatar of creation or something. Best not to think about it too much because the game doesn't. Basically, this thing wants to remake the world because that's what gods want to do, it seems like. And you gotta stop it, and that involves riding a motorcycle up the side of a rocket while it's traveling into space and then punching him in the eye. In comparison to a lot of other gigantic bosses, it's actually kind of hard to tell how big this is actually supposed to be. In its statue form, it's at least as big as a skyscraper, but when you battle it, the proportions aren't what I would call exactly clear. I guess when you start getting into god battles, the nature of reality really becomes more elastic, and I would guess that it probably doesn't have a consistent size. But that's definitely the case in the final ridiculous moments of the battle where Bayonetta summons a demon as big as the boss and then punches Jubileus into the sun. Just to make it extra crazy, you end up controlling the boss as they're flying through the solar system, moving around them to avoid destroying entire planets. So skyscraper, big as a planet, whatever, basically the same thing at this point because it's totally insane and great. And number 4 is the Dragon God from Demon's Souls, from Software's Soulsborne games. I mean, boss fights are a huge thing in them, so it's kind of surprising the biggest one they've ever had is actually in the game that started all of them. The experimental nature of the game is kind of on full display here, because while the Dragon God is visually amazing, the actual fight's not really a big deal. Not to be disrespectful to how huge this boss is, it's enormous, has the power to kill most players in a single punch, and the first time you encounter him, it's kind of hard to not just stand outside the boss arena terrified and baffled as to what you're supposed to do. Thankfully, some enterprising souls left a huge, perfectly good harpoon gun in the boss arena, and you use them to take this thing down. And even though getting to those is easier said than done, but really it just boils down to knowing which spots that the Dragon God's going to attack you from and standing in the right place to avoid it. Stand in the wrong spot, you're basically dead. Stand in the right spot, you can win. A lot of trial and error, and it feels kind of not menacing by the time you're done with it. The games don't really do puzzle bosses like this anymore, particularly for that reason. They're kind of an anticlimax, and they're frustrating too. But yeah, it's kind of a letdown when you see this big epic boss and you shoot it twice with harpoons and then punch it, and that's it. Not exactly the most dignified way to go out for something as impressive as the Dragon God, but it's still really intimidating and iconic, so we wanted to mention it. And number 3 from Wonderful 101, Jaringa. The best games know the power of a good finale, and some of them save the absolute best for last, allowing themselves to just go completely over the top in the final moments. And the Wonderful 101, which is already a ridiculous game, really goes to the next level for its final boss. If you can't even tell what's supposed to be happening here, then just follow along. What makes this game unique is that you play as a swarm of superheroes called the Wonderful Ones. Because of the perspective and the gameplay, pretty much everything you fight is huge because all your guys are small. So at the end of the game, you take on the alien emperor, who's apparently just a brain in the jar, but that is far from the ending. Once you defeat that, your little guys take on its giant robot form, which is huge, and again, still just a start. After you beat it and escape from the mothership, that's when things go completely off the rails. The enormous Death Star-like space fortress of the bad guys transforms into the final form, and the heroes board their ultimate robot called the Platinum Robo to find it. So their robot is absolutely gigantic on its own, and it's dwarfed by the final form of the bad guy. Final form? I don't know. So your giant robot it looks as small as a human compared to this thing. The Wonderful 101 is great, and it's super challenging, and has one of the most over-the-top finales of any game ever. At number 2 is the Earth Eater from Earth Defense Force 4. Normally, the Earth Defense games are more about numbers than size. Most of the enemies you fight are big, but we're mostly talking about stuff like giant ants and bugs and like the occasional robot. Usually that's about as big as things get, not counting the odd Godzilla-sized monster, but you want to talk about the absolute biggest enemy in an Earth Defense game, we're talking about EDF 4's Earth Eater. Basically, imagine if the sky was a boss, a mind-boggling construct of honeycomb-like cells that block out the sky and rain death upon your unsuspecting little soldier. You know what I mean? Like, look at this madness. How does this make any sense at all? Compared to the absolutely enormous mothership you normally take on in these games, this thing seems endless. There's more intimidating bosses out there in the EDF universe, but nothing as uniquely gigantic as this one. It's basically a Dyson sphere that you had to fight, which is bizarre and kind of amazing, which the series itself is kind of as a whole. At number 1, in Asura's Wrath, Chakravartin. Now, we had to eventually look at Asura's Wrath, right? There's no other game out there that goes beyond the impossible like this one. It's a game that starts out with your dude fighting a monster the size of a continent, and it escalates from there. One of the first true bosses you take on grows to be as big as the entire planet, and that guy pales in comparison to the true final boss of the game. Chakravartin, the being revealed to be the literal god in the world of Asura's Wrath, isn't afraid to show off a little. When you first encounter him, he's basically human-sized, and when you come back for the rematch, they've gotten just a little bit bigger. See those things in its hands? Those are entire galaxies. That's the scale we're talking about here. So when Asura goes to space to take this guy on, he also gets ridiculously huge, but you're still literally just a speck compared to this guy. He throws entire planets at you, he throws suns at you, and to call any or all of this insane is just a massive understatement. The actual final battle takes place against this guy in an abstract plane, so who knows how big anything is anymore. But in the final approach, you're flying through space, punching planets, fighting a being that makes galaxies look like they're nothing. There's nothing else that even comes close to this dude's size in video games. If you want over-the-top anime madness, Asura's Wrath has that in spades. It almost makes up for the fact that you had to buy this fight as DLC. Almost. That's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable all notifications, and as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.